Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Throw yourself off this building. That's what Satan says to Jesus. Now, let's talk about Satan just for a second. We cannot ascribe infinite knowledge to a finite, created, sinful being, in other words, Satan. So Satan was hopeful, but not knowledgeable about his interaction with Jesus. He didn't know what Jesus was going to do. Maybe he thought that Jesus was going to actually obey him. Satan, that's what he wanted. He thought maybe Jesus could be swayed by him. But like us, Satan goes to God's school to find out what Jesus is really like. So he wants to know, will Jesus really align with humanity and be humbled all the way to the cross? So his first trick is to say to turn these stones into bread because he knows that he's hungry. Let's not really join humanity in the resisting of temptations. Let's not really perfectly bear all the humanness that people are bearing. So if Jesus would have made bread out of those stones, he wouldn't have been able to help you, podcast listener, in your temptation. So what Jesus does on day one of his ministry has everything to say about whether he's going to go all the way to the cross. So no hunger means that I'm not made like them. I'm not the perfect sacrifice for their sins. If I can't bear this rumbly-tumbly, I certainly can't bear the beatings and nails and thorns of crucifixion. So no hunger equals no cross. And without this bearing of physical discomfort, the enduring of that temptation, Jesus would not endure the cross. So no hunger equals no cross. We're in the wilderness. This is from chapter 4 of Matthew, verse 5. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." And Jesus says to him, again, it is written, "You shall not put the Lord your God to the test." So Satan quotes Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12 to Jesus, and Jesus quotes Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 16, back to Satan. So Jesus is encouraged to throw himself down from the pinnacle of the temple, which is about 150 feet tall, 15 stories, about as tall as the Colosseum or the Arc de Triomphe. So this literally is a murderous suggestion. It's a fatal height. Satan would have loved nothing more than to see Jesus fall from this height. So before we get into the spiritual battle, like the first temptation about hunger and bread, Satan is testing whether Jesus is submitting to the forces of this planet, whether he's obeying these physical laws of gravity and hunger and temperature and need for sleep and physical and relational pain. He's testing whether Jesus is going to count equality with God, empty himself, be born in the likeness of man, humble himself, and be obedient all the way to the cross, even death on a cross. So that's his first test. And then secondly, this is a temptation to what I call spiritual presumption. It's demanding something of God, a miracle, to avoid the natural pattern of the created world. So rather than experiencing a consequence, a person asks or really demands as they pound their fist upon the table, I want to be removed from this consequence by a miracle. So I want to experience the miracle rather than the natural outcome. I want a miracle, but not the natural aftermath of my actions. I want this wonder, not the normal outcome. I want this spectacle, not the normal sequela. So spiritual presumption is walking wide-eyed into a sin, knowing it's a sin, and then demanding of God no consequences from that action. It's the person that says, I'm going to do this anyway. God's going to forgive me. All right, the third thing I want to talk about today is the most sobering aspect of this encounter between these two titans of good and evil, is that they both use the Bible. Now, the Bible is always accurate, but not every use of the Bible is accurate. Not every use of the Bible is for your good or for you. Not every use of the Bible is utilized by someone who's interested in the truth. And not every use of the Bible is given by someone who is personally submitted to the word. So here's a couple of pro tips on who you can trust with the Bible. So what about the person who's giving the lesson? Is that person personally submitted to the word? That's a good start. Secondly, is that person positionally over you? So are you, as a rule, to submit to the person to a person in the authority structure that God has given to his local church. Now, you may throw up your arms and say, whoa, 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 I have no one over me. I'll never submit to anyone. Well, if that's you, you should be of great concern for yourself, because every person should be in a flock, in a sheepfold, known, cared for, and protected by a shepherd. And why is that? Well, sorry to say this, but we all exhibit a great deal of sheepiness. So you should be finding someone who is trained in the scriptures, or better yet, someone who is trained by the scriptures. I always like to tell this story. The true story is, you've heard many times, you should read the Bible in the year. And so one year I was going to do it. And I started to read the Bible, and it's about 3 chapters a day, and you just keep smashing up against these truths that require, in my exposure, real consideration and real change. And this happened regularly as I was banging through these 3 chapters a day. And I realized as I was doing this that the purpose of Bible reading was not so much to get through the Bible in a certain amount of time, but it was much more important to get the Bible through me before my time runs out. So the first time I tried it to read the Bible in a year, it took me 4 years. The second time I read the Bible in a year, it took me 5 years. The third time I read the Bible in a year, it took me 9 years. And I'll let you know how long it's going to take to read it again. Okay, we'll come back to this story and more temptations for Jesus. But at least for today, Jesus, please don't throw yourself off of this building. Thanks for listening.